But we're continuing to learn about discipleship from the life of Daniel. And I've got something that you don't want to hear. God's not fair. Oh, we don't want to hear that at all, do we? But today, as we talk about favor that comes from God, we're going to realize that favor is not fair either. Discipleship lesson number 7. Favor comes from God. In Daniel chapter 1, verse 9, it said, "Now God brought Daniel into favor and goodwill with the chief of the eunuchs." Favor comes in very unexpected ways. Favor is completely unexpected. God's the one who gives favor. We can try and we can do everything we can, but ultimately it comes from God. Yes, I know. Proverbs 16:7 says, "When a man's ways please the Lord, he makes even his enemies to be at peace with him." You can say, well, see, if I'm good enough, people will like me. No, it says God makes the people. He makes your enemies. He makes everyone. He is the one who gives you favor. And you know what? God often uses people to display his favor to you. There are times that God can do it and give his favor through miracles, through healings, and it's a divine touch that only he would do or give. But there's other times that God uses people, and sometimes the most unlikeliest of all people are the ones that God chooses to use. In our story with Daniel today, we're going to see that God used a eunuch. Wait a minute. That's why they were chosen. That's why the king chose these men, because he had worked with them. They had gone through things that caused them not to show favoritism to anyone because their life depended on it. Yet Daniel received favor from the eunuch. God can give me favor in unexpected circumstances. I mean, who would think that someone who is a captive under King Nebuchadnezzar, the most powerful man in the known world at that time, would be shown favor? But it happened to Daniel. It happened right there in the king's palace. And then favor often shows up in the hard times. That's the way it was with Queen Esther. She was living in a harem when God showed her favor. That's the way it was with Joseph. He was in prison. God showed him favor. And that's the way it was with Daniel. He was a captive in the king's palace when God showed him favor. Well, we need to understand what favor is, because we have a lot of misconceptions about it. But yet some qualities of favor are common to all the people who receive it. First of all, favor is God's gift of grace. And because it is a gift, and because it's grace, it does not have to be fair. Think about the kids that you have, Christmas time. You try to be fair at Christmas, birthdays, and buy everybody something that's equal, something that you think is going to be fair. But you can't do it exactly. You might spend the same amount of money, but you won't get the same gifts unless they're identical. And if everything's identical, then it's no longer favor. It's just being the same. Favor is often unexpected. Daniel was blessed in a very unexpected position. No one expected him to be blessed where he was in the king's palace. And God may have you in a place that no one expects you to be blessed either. Maybe you're in a situation on your job. Maybe it's at home. And you think, life just couldn't get any worse. But in those unexpected times and in unexpected ways, God can show you his favor. And when he does that, just know that he's doing it just as an act of grace to you. And favor can be given through unbelievers. Maybe you've got coworkers, a boss, a spouse, children, or grandkids that you are just ready to give up on, and you're wondering, I don't know how much longer I can take this. But then God, in an unexpected way, will show you favor that you never expected. He'll let you know that his love for you is still there. And sometimes it's just in the little things. Favor usually causes improved circumstances. That's the way it was for Daniel, for Queen Esther, for Joseph. You go along, and all of a sudden, things happen that you just never expected, and in places that you never expected them to happen. I remember what happened to me. Now, this is a story from many years ago, but it was one of the first times that I really saw God's favor on me, and I knew that God loves me, and he wanted to do something extra special for me. As I said, it was many years ago, and a friend and I were on a trip, and we were on our way up to Maine, and with no particular destination. We had stopped in New Jersey to see a botanical garden and got up that morning to continue, and I saw the Miss America pageant was that night, and I'd forgotten all about it. And I realized, hey, we're in New Jersey. Maybe we could go see it in person. So we take the drive, and it was the last year that the pageant was on the boardwalk. And we get there. It's a hot day. And we stand in line. And we stand in line, and we wait and wait out in the sun, hot and sweaty, to even get inside the building to buy tickets. And we get inside, and there's another long line. Well, I look over, and there's a guy with nobody in his line. I tell my friend, I'm going to go see if he has tickets and how much they are. I mean, we didn't even know how much the tickets were. We had just already set a price in our mind of what we could pay. So I go over and I ask him about 2 tickets. And then I say, how much are they? And he says, $7. Well, I think $7 is probably behind and above the nosebleed section. So I say, look, are these seats any good? And he looks at me and says, lady, these are the best seats in the house. And if I didn't think that someone up there liked you, you would never get them. So I take the tickets for $7. And everybody's asking what time they should be there, and I show my tickets to the person there at the doorway, and I heard her tell the people in front of me 6:30, and then she looked at hours, and 6 o'clock, and she said 7:30 when a live TV program is going to start at 8. Well, I thought, that's not right. Well, anyway, we go out to get some clothes because we had left the hotel that morning. There are no hotel rooms in town, and all we have is what we have on, which is certainly not appropriate. We go to the shop and to buy an outfit for the night. You know, us ladies, we look for any excuse we can to buy clothes. And the shopkeeper, who could have made a sale, said, "Oh, you're going to there. You're just fine. Everybody's just going to be dressed like you." Well, we decided to get there at 6 instead of 7:30 with everybody else. And sure enough, everybody's dressed just like us. Yeah. Very vacation clothes. You know, capris, a top, whatever, jeans. And so we get there and we show our tickets to the usher. I'll never forget, the usher looks at the tickets and he looks at us and he looks back at the tickets. And he starts walking. And we start following him. And we pass where the people are seated. And we keep going. And we keep going. And then we get to a row right at the very end. And then he starts walking us down and down and down to the second row. No one shows up that looks any different than us till about 7 o'clock. And I said, "Doris, look, we see a couple coming in an evening gown and tuxedo." And they keep walking and walking. And sure enough, they get to our section. Several rows behind us, but still in our section. By the time 7:30 arrives, 8:15, our part is full of everybody in tuxedos and evening gowns but us. We are seated. If you ever watched Miss America, you know they do it in alphabetical order. We were seated with Alabama, parents and friends on the second row. I took pictures leaning on the stage. I mean, favor. Unexpected circumstances. That is something God alone could do, and it proved to me favor is not fair. When God wants to bless you, He will use unexpected people, and it will improve your circumstances, and it will be a blessing to others. Yeah, the friend that was with me, she was blessed because God favored me. That man said, "Somebody up there likes you." And favor, it can last beyond us. Just like Daniel and Esther, Joseph, Israel continued to be blessed because of these three men. Your life, your legacy can last beyond you. So that's what favor is, but what is favor not? Let's understand that favor can't do everything or doesn't do everything. Daniel 1:10 said, "And the chief of the eunuchs said to Daniel," when Daniel asked for a favor, "I fear my lord the king, who has appointed your food and your drink. For why should he see your face looking worse than the young men who are your age? Then you would endanger my head from the king." What's favor not? Favor is not a way around the rules. Yeah. Teachers' pets still have to obey the rules. God's favorite still has to obey the rules. Daniel was still expected to follow the king's diet plan unless he got permission not to. Favor is not authority. You don't get to be the boss. David still had to be in submission and report to the eunuch and ask permission to do what he wanted to do. Favor is not a way to override God's plan for our life. Daniel's circumstances were probably definitely improved because he had favor. This eunuch probably saw to it through his associate that he had the best. Just like Esther was given maidservants, Joseph was put over everybody in the prison But in spite of all of that, Daniel was not removed from the location or the circumstances where God had placed him. Joseph was put in a place where he could speak to the king, to Pharaoh over Egypt eventually. Esther was put in a place where eventually she could speak to the king of Persia. Joseph was put in a place where eventually one day he would be able to speak to King Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon. God may have you in a hard place today, but in that hard place he'll give you favor. He will help you to survive, and he will cause you to rise and bring you to a place where he wants you to be so that you can be used for his glory. Favor is not a change factor for others. Oh, and that's what we need to really understand. Daniel became confident. Daniel had courage because of God's favor. But what about the eunuch? The eunuch still lived in fear of the king. So just because you have favor does not mean that everyone else around you will. And favor does not guarantee that we will get what we want. Because people show us favor doesn't mean that they can or they will help us. So what do we need to know? We know that favor can help us because it's going to give us courage. It's going to give us confidence. It can help us when the time comes for us to ask for change. And that's what we're going to be talking about in the next session.